now we're actually going to continue with transitioning ops to the cloud and teaching them how to write code. And Esther is going to introduce herself.
Yeah, let's do that. So just waiting for the slides to be up there. Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. I basically hijacked this session, so sorry, it's too late to now leave the room without me noticing it and trying to track you down at this event. So hopefully it will be an entertaining session and you might pick up a thing or two. So what I'm going to do today is share with you basically some of the adventures I had. For those of you who saw the session yesterday, the Ignite talk that I had, I'm not going to go and continue on that paved path. It's not going to be that easy of an adventure that I had. But I want to share my experiences and basically my story as being an original operator coming from the upside and getting so excited about automating processes and already starting with infrastructure as code that I didn't even consciously transition to a more DevOps engineering role. But the last couple of years, I definitely helped others more consciously transition to that role. So this is basically my, well, I'm not going to say life story, but just a couple of years story. So for those of you who do not know me already, my name is Esther Barthel. I stuck with the 20 plus years. By now I maybe should up it to 25 plus years, but no, we're not gonna age myself. So I've been a consultant for most of my career, currently self-employed, working as a freelancer, still trying to be a consultant, solution architect, but nowadays I'm just having too much fun as a DevOps engineer, so I'm all cool with that as well. And I've been very active for at least 8 years now in different communities to share my knowledge and experience and to try have some fun as well. So I've been awarded as a Citrix technology professional because I originated in end-user computing, and more recently as a Microsoft MVP. But one of the other things is that I also find it very important to make sure that the women in tech, and I know we shouldn't just focus on one group if we're talking about diversity, so I'm definitely created a mentorship program that is more diverse and inclusive. So we also have male mentors because they also have very important stories to tell us as well. But it's, well, I used to joke and say, it's not a dating show for me, people. I'm happy in a relationship for over 16 years, no worries. But I'm not sure if that's still like politically correct to say. But it's, for me, it's very important to make sure that the women in tech have a network and have those options to find their sponsors and their allies in this business. So that's enough promoting. I even put on the t-shirt, so let's get back to the fun and the passion that we definitely share. As I mentioned, nowadays I'm mostly focused on DevOps and automation. And as you can tell, I do have a preference for scripting languages because I just love PowerShell. So please forgive me for that. Once again, small agenda, and we'll just see how far we're going to get in sharing my experience. When I started with DevOps, it was just like a terminology or just this new hype. And I really wondered, coming from that ops side, if DevOps really is that combination, because if you're looking at the definition, it just states that it's combining development and operations. So does that mean that it's like a 50-50 deal? Where should I kind of plot DevOps on the whole scale? Definitely not on the upside entirely. Not entirely on the dev side either, but I do believe that DevOps is not like split in the middle. Because from my point of view, operator, loving the GUI, loving to click on stuff, it's kind of hard to get to understand all these new terminologies like source control and well, branching. I already explained how I learned that yesterday, but it's like a whole new world with a whole new tool set. Um, and having friends in the community even state that we as operators are shifting more and more to become developers, that's not really helpful to get us excited. Because I didn't sign up for a developer position in my company. I signed up for like the operator fund to be hardcore tech focused. So I'm very happy that one of my other friends in the community answered and said, well, chill. It's not like we've been automating for the first time. It's just that we have so much more fun tools and better tools to do it. And then you start digging into the tools. And you're going, that's not helpful either. And this is not to scare you off. This is just to give you an idea of, well, the shock I had and like the question mark. So, okay, DevOps is all about using cool tools. I love working with tools. So let's dive in. And then you're at the point going like, this is so overwhelming. Where do I start? So nowadays, I try to explain to the new ops generation that wants to make that transition and be more flexible, especially future focused, that maybe we should focus on the processes first. Because for me, it still feels like automation should be a supportive action of the business processes that you want to improve and optimize. Once again, coming from an ops background, I don't know how many of you come from an ops background, but how many of you have worked with the waterfall method for projects? Oh, thank you. That's not the most fun way of working in projects, right? Because it all starts with just being so hyper-focused on building that full-scale blueprint of your entire solution. And maybe we're, as engineers, are not working on it, but those architects definitely are, and they're taking weeks, months, maybe even half a year. And by the time technology already changed, but we're still stuck with this cool blueprint that has every scenario covered. And then we start finally building stuff. Yes, that's where the Lego Association comes from. Building stuff. That's what we love to do, right, as engineers. And then at the end, we're all excited about what we built. This huge dragon monolith, I've heard a couple of times. And then it's time to release. Look, end user, this is what we built you. Have fun, we make your life easy. There are like 10,000 assumptions in here, and we never checked with you. But now is your time to give us feedback on how cool we are. Yes, not the best experience. Because usually, that's when you get into this. The end user doesn't understand what we built. It's so functional. Why don't they get it? Why are they giving us a hard time about changing their way of work? And I'm not saying that Agile is the solution for everything, but at least Agile makes sure that we focus on a subset of features, that we at least start to work on that and have all the security and quality and everything in place, quickly build at least a minimal viable product. That's the other MVP terminology that I sometimes get confused with. Thanks, Microsoft. And then we get to release it, but at least we get feedback on that particular part, and we can just make some changes. And for those of you who are more visual, I try to explain it in like a better, I don't know if anyone had like these project manager training sessions long time ago. Aging myself again. I just took some of the pictures. Like, build me a swing. That was the question. I want to have like a tree and then have like a swing. Well, as you can see, the waterfall method definitely ran into this one tiny piece of feedback in the end, that the swing didn't actually swing. There was a tree in the way, so they fixed that. Not sure if that's really functional. Well, what I try to show you with this one is, especially with Agile, that you have these shorter iterations, so you quickly get feedback on whether you're still on track. You get an opportunity to check your assumptions. Especially the first one, we got some feedback from the security guys that it wasn't entirely clear which body part to put in the swing. Yes, that might have caused us some problem. So I'm very happy that that was just the .1 version. But as you can see, we improved, we got better feedback, we made some changes, changed a bit more. And I think in the end, you get like a really deluxe swing experience. That's what we want to give our end users, right? If we're talking about Agile, we also talk about Scrum and everything that comes with it. And I'm not going to explain the entire process by drawing you a picture of a paved road and some sandy side roads. But I do want to share some of the experience or the eye-openers for me. Because first of all, I just loved this whole new team structure where I had like a Scrum Master that would facilitate me with any challenges that I would run into. And I have this product owner that would just talk with all the stakeholders. And me as a developer in the development team, or as a DevOps engineer in the development team, I could just focus on the technical stuff without all the hassle. And the cool part is, I didn't even have to have experience of knowledge of all the technologies that we were going to use, because everyone was like a specialist on their own. And fortunately, everyone is capable of sharing that knowledge. So you can at least say, show me some of that cool stuff. Oh, I want to learn that too. Cool. So even your own growth is like guaranteed. Sounds pretty awesome, right? And then we started with like the daily Scrum. Anyone have any experience with that? I guess that's like a rhetorical question, right? So my first association with the daily Scrum was that it kind of felt like that kumbaya campfire experience, where you just sit around and go, what did you do this weekend? Go like, well, I'm not sure if I want to share that I did like a live action role-playing game with you. I'm not entirely sure if that fits you, or that I just had this really cool Lego set and then the conversation just gets lost. No, what I discovered that the really cool part is about the daily Scrum is, first of all, I'm not very good at asking for help. So first of all, thank you, Krista, for making me aware that it's okay to ask for help. Still, that doesn't mean that it's a natural thing that pops up in my head. What I love about the daily Scrum is that you get to simply answer the question, what's in my way? And while I'm where I'm telling them what my impediments are, they just instantly offer me help. It's like amazing. I didn't even ask for it yet, but they already said, oh, have you tried this and that? Or, well, in my experience, or, oh, I ran into that too. And then you both get excited about having a problem that you can fix. So for me, that was a very important lesson to embracing the daily Scrum. And I wanted to share that with you as well. And I already told you a couple of times now that I come from the operating side of IT. So that means for me, talking about DevOps is all about infrastructure as code. And if you're looking at, once again, a definition, because I love to have the definitions and try to understand what the terminology is all about, it's all about provisioning infrastructure resources. in a software similar way. That's where we have to learn from the developer tools and methods. And in our case, it means that we're focusing on templates and scripts, using that with an orchestrator to deploy our resources, either on premises in your private cloud or in a public cloud. So far, that means cool technology and tools. So I'm still on game on that one. But I figured it was also very important to explain, if we're talking about code, that there are basically two types of code: imperative code and declarative code. Because usually when you start to talk about code, there's this instant fear with operators that they will become scripters. That it's all about scripting. And somehow, that's, I'm not going to say like a dirty word, but it's kind of like, didn't sign up for that one. So I started to explain to them that we have two types of code. First of all, imperative code. And that's all about following a sequence of commands, basically. And I tried to explain that to myself, so I said, well, it's kind of like following a recipe. Yes, I love to cook. Guilty of that. And yes, I love hamburgers. Guilty of that too. So I figured, why not combine another passion with this passion? So for me, imperative code, to easily explain it, it's like following each and every step in the recipe to get to that end result, that juicy hamburger that just makes your day. But in a healthy way, Krista. No worries. So if we go back to infrastructure as code, it's all about using scripts. And scripts gives you the freedom of specifying each and every step in the process, but it also comes with the responsibility to include error handling, to include all the what-if scenarios and check maybe if the resources already exist or not, and how to handle that. If we're looking at declarative code, well, that's the easy one. That's just worrying about the end configuration that you want to have. Basically, that's walking into a restaurant, looking at the menu. This one looks nice. I'll have that one. And basically, you don't have to worry about how it's prepared in the kitchen. Well, okay, maybe that's not the best combination, because maybe sometimes you need to worry about what's happening in the kitchen. But then you're at the wrong restaurant. So let's get back to the comparison. It's just about pointing at the end result that you want to have on your plate. And you still have the opportunity to decide whether or not you want to have that tomato on there, or whether you want to have extra bacon. Though that's not really a choice, right? Everyone loves extra bacon. Yes, thank you. Yes, you love extra bacon too, Floor. I just saw you shaking your head. Getting back to the conversation. So, declarative code is all about using those templates. And the cool part is that nowadays, going back to those better tools, we have these awesome tools at hand, like Terraform, if we're talking about infrastructure as code, to just specify that end configuration and let the tool worry about making it so. I think that's pretty cool, because then we can focus on the fun part of the work. So, I think if you get started with DevOps, especially focusing on infrastructure as code, try to start with creating templates. Because, taking Azure as an example, the engine behind the portal that translates all the portal clicks and commands and requests back to providing resources is your Azure Resource Manager. And as you can see, you can easily use the portal to have that GUI and happily click around and get all your resources. But nowadays, you can also directly send that template to the Azure Resource Manager. That makes life easy. And in my case, as I love Bicep as well, And I have whole videos on YouTube together with Freek Bersen on how Bicep helps you and makes your life easy. But that's for another conversation. So in this is just an example to say I can use Bicep to have a more human readable form of using a template, presenting it to the Azure Resource Manager, and then have those resources that I specified deployed in Azure. Sounds very easy, right? And it's not just one tool to rule them all. It's so many cool tools, because there's also Terraform, as I mentioned before, but that's based on the same principle. We have a configuration file, a template, and that will deploy the resources for us. So now it's not just about infrastructure as code. That's just the start of ruling the world. Now it's about everything as code. That's a lot, right? And that's a lot of tools. But the principle basically is the same. You start, in this case, I'm even using a centralized repository because I did pick up some terminologies from that awesome branching strategy discussion. So you start with your repository, you have your templates there, and then everything just gets bigger and bigger. You start small, and then you add new functionality to it. Because I think that's like the best way to stay excited about our technologies at hand. And I hope that one day I'll be able to build this. I'm not there yet, to be honest. But at least now it makes sense that we have so many tools. Because it's not about picking the right tool. It's about combining different tools to build and to support an automatic build deployment of resources and configurations all to the world. That's it. This is the exciting moment.
Questions?
Wow, nice. Do you want me to read the question and just...
There's only one, so
Yeah,
it's like branches.
I'm hoping that more will follow. Thank you.
Are we talking
In your
branches or
opinion,
questions now?
is DevOps moving to development side more than to operations? Well, as you saw in one of the first slides, that's definitely my opinion, which is okay, because it's from the viewpoint of methodologies that you use or tools that you use, like the source control. I used to be one of those operators that had like 10 different folders with 10 different files in there saying my first scripting attempt version 2021 01, and then some other cool date format that didn't make sense after 2 weeks when I tried to figure out which of those 10 files had the working version. So for me, it was a big learning curve to get to understand source control and how it works for me and how it makes me less nervous about deleting code. Because it's in their commit somewhere, so I should be able to get it back. Still haven't fully figured that out, but Google is very helpful. So that's at least answering one part of the question. Wow, would you rather hire an ops person with no dev experience or vice versa? I'm not sure how to translate that question. Are you asking which one is more eager to learn both sides of the coin, or? Well, for me, the easy challenge or the easy choice would be to hire an ops person with no dev experience, because that means we're talking about the same place where I came from. But by now, I think, to be really honest, it's easier to explain the using templates to specify the infrastructure that you as a developer need. So the easiest way for me, the less challenging conversations, would be to hire a developer with no ops experience. But that's just my personal opinion. Wow. So many questions. Still so much time. You get what you ask for. So is it true that DevOps is moving towards IDP, internal developer platform? Wow. I'm not sure if it's our intent to move that way, but I do agree that that's definitely the movement that we're seeing now, but I don't think that's like the end goal for DevOps to get there. Hopefully that answers your question a bit.
We have time for one more.
Okay. Do you struggle with cross-functional teams at the moment that a feature is more focused on dev than ops? I do struggle with cross-functional teams, but that's when we're just focused on the technology and how cool it is to build stuff with it, and not have that link anymore, or checking the assumptions that we're making implementing technology with the business processes. Because what I found most important working in DevOps teams is that you stay aligned with those business processes, because your automation, your pipelines, your DevOps implementations should support the business processes and not dictate how the business should do their work in an automated way. I hope that is an understandable answer. And now I will leave the stage. Thanks. Super.